Yes, it is.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Parks, Library, and Arts. It is Tuesday, the 17th of August, and we just have a few things on our agenda today, and then a conversation quickly about something that's not on the agenda. First off, we have Resolution 1111. It is a resolution celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Frist Art Museum. This usually would just go straight to the Rules Committee for conversation, but our Vice Chair brought this resolution, and I wanted to acknowledge it as somebody who has been a member for 20 years of the Frist Art Museum. I want to thank you so much for doing so, and I wanted to go ahead and put on the record that this committee is in support. So if I have a motion. Fantastic. Is there any additional conversation about this?
If I may.
Yes, please.
I thought it was important for us to acknowledge the fact that the Frist Museum has been in existence for 20 years and providing opportunities for multicultural exhibits, opportunities to learn not only about our artists nationally, but internationally. They've had some great exhibits, certainly in the last 10 years, Frida Kahlo and Picasso and Monet, and it's been wonderful to see that come to Nashville.
Yeah.
So,
fantastic. If you are a member of this committee and want to add your name before it gets to it, then please make sure and let the clerk know.
Okay.
If there's no other conversation about that, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I don't see anybody opposed to that. Thank you so much for taking that initiative. We're going to go to 1101, accepts a grant from the Tennessee Arts Commission to Creative Parks Nashville in conjunction with the Metro Parks and Rec Department to provide big band dances at Centennial Park Event Shelter. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Fantastic. Properly seconded. Any discussion about this? A big band? Anybody been to one of these?
Will we get invited? Because that's what I immediately thought.
I have
a quorum.
Yes, there's 4, which is a quorum.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any questions about it?
I do, because I know that they've been doing the big band dances for a limited time. Is this to expand, or is this just re-upping what they're already doing?
Do you?
It's a continuation of. I mean, they have to apply for the grant every year.
I think it's like a month in the summer or something.
It's just however they schedule them. No particular.
Oh, okay. I was just aware of like the month in the summer that they did it, but they do it more than that?
No, I'm just saying it could be one event could be in June, the next one could be in July. It's just however they schedule them out.
Okay. Does this expand the number of times that we can do that?
No, this is the new one for this fiscal year.
Okay. I was hoping it was expanded.
It's a pass-through grant. It's fantastic, and I know that a lot of people are real excited about him. And when I was at the Shakespeare Festival, we could always hear them, so that's when I know it's about that time of year. Because at this time. All right. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Seeing none
Great council
opposed.
activity.
Yeah. And now we move to 1102, calls for the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, the Greenways and Open Space Commission, and the Metro Legal Department to solicit community input and gather data from the cities regarding the authorization of electric bikes on Metro Greenways and to request a moratorium on any council legislation related to electric bicycles on the greenways until the community input and data can be collected. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
And there is a proposed amendment on this as well, which I did not review.
It's not on there yet,
Okay.
but I'm happy to present it.
Yes, please do.
Please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we did that. Move the amendment, probably seconded.
I came back on the committee, that's why, after being off of it for a year. So what the amendment does is, I don't know if there are copies here, but so what it does is it takes out these highlighted parts. So in the whereases, on whereas number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it says the greenways with no known incidents or problems, talking about e-bikes. And then on the last whereas, it also says with no known incidents or problems, so on and so forth. And then at the bottom, it talks about where it is appropriate to limit the use of e-bikes in Nashville beyond existing state law, and that's tweaked as well, and I just don't remember off the top of my head how we tweak that. But basically, if this is a resolution that is asking to do a study about the impact of e-bikes in Nashville, then I think it is, I guess we are being a little bit of cart before the horse by saying there's no problem here. By basically saying we have come to a conclusion before we have even studied it, it is, I think, bad policy. It's not we should not be putting that into a resolution, even though it is just the whereases. We all know that whereases are frequently cited as part of our intention, and I think our legislative intention is always important because that is what is cited later on when we come back to a study and what we're doing with it, and it's also what is frequently, well, it's always cited whenever you go to court and things like that. Doing a quick Google study or search this afternoon, I found 2 quick articles showing that one is titled "E-bikes show distinct pattern of severe injuries. E-bikes under fire as accidents and fatalities climb in New York City." Quick Google search says there are fatalities out there. If you are on any Greenway's Facebook page, you have probably seen issues that of people being run over by e-bikes or accidents with e-bikes. So I think for us to say, and again, my position is this isn't pro or con e-bikes. It is we shouldn't be making a foregone conclusion in the whereases in a resolution.
And so basically, nothing's gonna happen till all this study is done.
That's what her amendment is.
No, my amendment doesn't, the resolution does that. My amendment just takes out the assumptions that there are
That
no
they're okay.
problems.
Okay.
Because I think that's
There haven't been
problematic.
any reported that I know of. Go ahead.
So I'm a co-sponsor, and all the language being deleted is language I added. It's deemed, with all due respect, a completely unfriendly amendment, and changes the character of it. And if the amendment gets added, I come off as a co-sponsor and ask the body to defer this resolution. What's going on is for years now, the parks system has had a rule saying no e-bikes allowed on the greenways. For years, e-bike riders have known that that's completely unenforceable under state law, but have more or less just ignored the rule and used the greenways. This issue's coming to a head now because fleets of e-bikes are being deployed. The B-cycle are electric, and the scooter companies have a contractual obligation, apparently, I'm told, to add e-bikes at some point in the near future. So privately owned e-bike owners who've been ignoring the unenforceable rule for years, now it's coming to a head, and from people who are want the greenways only for walkers and not for bike riders are concerned about this too. So the mayor's office convened a stakeholder meeting 2 Fridays ago that had 20-some people, representatives from greenways, parks, the mayor's office, Walk Bike Nashville, Councilmember Allen, and me. And the consensus among the group was that Councilmember Allen and I would work on an agreed upon set of language for a resolution. And in front of 20 people, what I said was for me to participate, there has to be an acknowledgement in the resolution that the current rule is not enforceable under state law, which it says in here. There had to be no suggestion whatsoever that e-bikes have caused a problem. And notwithstanding Googleable things, every time I'm in a conversation, I ask anybody if they're aware of a actual e-bike incident in Nashville on the greenways. And to date, I've not been pointed to any examples of that. So my participation required that there's no suggestion that there's a problem with e-bikes. It can be neutral on that, but there can't be a suggestion about that. And there can't be an assumption that we have to do something. Current state law says that e-bikes are allowed on the greenways, Class 1 e-bikes are allowed on greenways, unless the council passes something with 21 votes saying otherwise. So right now, the status quo is there's no prohibition. And the deal we struck with 20 people at the stakeholder meeting was that there would be a resolution that Berkeley and I agreed on the terms, and nobody would pursue an angle of trying to lay the groundwork to say that there's a problem or that something needs to be done. And I fully respect my colleagues' right to bring an amendment, but if the amendment gets added, it's no longer an agreement on language between me and Berkeley. I'm off the resolution. If we're gonna have a fight about whether e-bikes are okay or not okay, then let's just have the fight. If somebody wants to propose legislation to limit them, propose legislation to limit them, and we can have the fight straight up. But I can't be a part of legislation that implies, suggests that something has to be done. So I personally would prefer to have the amendment not added. If y'all decide it should be added, that's cool, but I'm gonna come off the legislation. I would ask for this to just be deferred for a month to see whether we can get back to the original intent of the stakeholder group to have Berkeley and I agree on some language. So that's where I'm at.
Are there any other comments about the proposed amendment? Mr. Syracuse?
Thank you. I'm a co-sponsor of the amendment, and so all due respect to Bob, and I appreciate his time working on this. I think all of us are on the same page from a broad perspective. You know, we want our greenways to be safe. We want to have some objective data, and so all due respect to Bob, the resolution, the amendment to the resolution here, actually, in my opinion, reduces the subjectivity of it. It removes the assertion that there have been no problems or whatever. Our parks director has admitted that they don't police 24/7 the greenways. So they don't necessarily know about all incidents or all potential things that have happened on the greenways. There could be things that we don't know about. So I'm an avid biker, I know Bob is too. I'm not anti-e-bike, but I think if we've not learned from anything from our debacle with scooters or whatnot, you know, do we have ample infrastructure to be able to accommodate e-bikes? Many questions that we should be going through an objective process to learn about, and let's come up with an intentional process about it, how to implement them. If the study comes back and says, no problems, go for it, great. But at the end of the day, we pay for the infrastructure. And now you have a corporation, Trek, coming in and wants to have this partnership with us and deliver their for-profit company's product to us on our infrastructure. So let's engage them, and quite honestly, they've been really cool to work with. And they don't really have a problem with doing this study, and have said, you know what, we'll hold off until you do. And so let's work with them. And I don't think this amendment proposal here ruins the spirit of the collaborative effort of ensuring that we have objective data.
Councilmember Stiles, you have a question? Comment?
Well, two. So my first is in regards to the e-bikes. Are there certain levels in regards to e-bikes and slower ones, faster ones? Are all of them allowed? I mean, are they all prohibited currently? I understand you mentioned just one.
I could answer that real
Please,
quick.
go ahead.
They're under state law, and this is uniform law across the country. They're class 1, class 2, class 3. Class 2 are actually the most different. Class 2 are you can operate by a throttle only, and you don't have to pedal to go. And frankly, I think we could reach agreement that throttle-controlled e-bikes maybe should be prohibited. Currently, today, under state law, they are allowed unless we act as a body to prohibit them. Class 1 and Class 3 require pedaling. The difference in class is when the electric motor stops. So in a Class 1, the electric motor stops at 20 miles an hour, top speed, and under Class 3, the electric motor stops giving help at 28 miles an hour. State law says that Class 1 and Class 2 are allowed on greenways unless the county legislative body says otherwise. Class 3 are not supposed to be on greenways or bike lanes under state law. So that's the difference. And the main practical difference, if you ride one, is when the motor stops giving assist, you go from pedaling relatively gently to all of a sudden you've got a sluggish 55-pound bike that's very difficult to go any faster. The B-cycle fleet tops out the motor at 15. And so when you ride them, you can pedal relatively gently at 14 miles an hour, and the moment you hit 15, you've got a sluggish 55-pound bike on your hands that is very difficult to go any faster with. That's the difference.
And then I just have one second part.
Yes, you had a follow-up, that's fine.
Yes, well, in listening to both sides, I mean, I feel like if there's more discussion that needs to be had, I want to move to do a deferral for the 1 month the sponsor proposed.
There's a motion to defer the amendment, and I want to make sure that Councilmember Allen has a chance to say something.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I'm speaking to the deferral motion. So Councilmember Mendez and I both have been engaged in this discussion of how to come up with a process that would simply say, we need to know what we're dealing with before we make any legislative changes. That's what this resolution does. And I appreciate the references to whether or not we know about incidences specifically related to e-bikes. I mean, there's some discussion that can be had there. All this does is put in motion a formalized process for NDOT, the legal department, and Greenway's Commission to begin to gather data right now and to try to finish that process by January that says, here's what we know, best practices from other cities, here's what the data on our greenways is telling us today with some e-bikes that are out there today, because technically state law has said that the rules don't apply, it has to be a council legislation. And let's do community engagement and find out what people think in a formalized way that involves both Walk Back Nashville, Greenways for Nashville Parks, and NDOT. That's what this legislation does. And it asks the council not to pass any bills that would restrict or make changes until we know what we're dealing with. So the sooner we get the data gathering process begun, the sooner we can know what we're dealing with. So I would ask that we not defer the bill. The recitals are important to set the context, but the real issue is what are the therefores, and the therefores are let's gather data, let's try to do it by January 1, and let's not make any legislative changes until we've gathered the data. I would like to get that process in motion as soon as we can.
Is there any other committee input before I make a statement? Okay. I gotta tell you, I'm not getting younger. And I've been working a lot with 50 Forward and other senior organizations. And to me, the e-cycle addition to our multimodal part of being a Nashvilleian speaks to that. I think we're getting younger and younger as a city, but there is a growing senior community that will never access our greenways without assistance on the bike. And so with that, I am absolutely an advocate for making sure that those community discussions include people over 55 and also includes disabled and folks that might not be able to use the greenway otherwise. I don't know that in my opinion, the amendment is necessary in order to achieve those things. And so there is a motion to defer. I don't support that motion, but is there a second to it? Okay, seeing none, we will go back to the resolution. If there is a
Nancy,
motion.
if I may make a
Just sure.
rebuttal
Absolutely.
on the amendment. This morning in the car, I hear a radio ad, and it is Trek, and that these in a partnership with B-Cycle, or that it's a subsidiary, B-Cycle is a subsidiary Trek, one or the other, and that thanks to the downtown partnership, they are bringing e-bikes to our greenways. Last time I checked, our greenways should be regulated and determined what goes on our greenways by NDOT, by Greenways, by Parks, and by this council. So I am going to make that editorial comment that I am concerned that the downtown partnership is made a decision here, and that there's already advertisement out there that e-bikes are going to be on our Greenways without any of those other organizations, Greenways, 50 Forward, anyone having any of that kind of discussion. With all due respect to Councilman Mendez and Council Lady Allen, I appreciate their leadership over the past 6 years. I've worked with you all often on things, but it is this council that decides what we pass and what we vote on, and what that looks like. And at the end of the day, if we want to pass a neutral piece of legislation tonight, then we amend it and take out the subjective language saying that there are no known issues out there. Look on any forum, look on any Facebook page, and you're going to see that there's an issue. Go walk the Greenways. Y'all have been on the Greenways. We do need to have a neutral piece of legislation passed tonight, and the way we accomplish that is by amending it with this amendment here. And so I'd ask for your support. I don't think that it needs to be deferred. I think the amendment needs to go on to neutralize the legislation.
Oh, we appreciate your position. Yes, ma'am.
Chair, I apologize, I was in Public Works, I guess for the primary discussion of the amendment, but there is the language for, no incidents. Is there any other change of language in?
There's the two that takes it out, and then it changes that, it is, Jeff, do you have it in front of you? It does change it where it basically says that instead of, on the last whereas, it talks about e-bikes in Nashville.
Okay, appropriate to limit the use of e-bikes in, and then you strike the words Nashville beyond, and you just said metro parks as permitted under existing state law. Okay, I'm sorry, I just knew that there was a secondary part of it that was not, that we weren't speaking to, so.
I don't see metro legal here, but is there any legal concerns over the amendment that we don't know about? Does it cause any?
Who's the assigned attorney for parks?
I mean,
We have two attorneys at the
David,
table.
yeah.
The administration could speak to that.
I'm not aware of a legal concern. I would just say that when it came to light that perhaps the Parks Board current regulations were beyond what state law would have allowed because it had to come through council, the mayor's office started getting calls, and it was our impression that the council members, from Ms. Zeitlin, council members were getting calls. And it seemed like both sides were gearing up to come here with legislation from both perspectives, some that would explicitly allow e-bikes and some that would explicitly prohibit. And we did not know the answer, and I don't know what the average man on the street would prefer, and today I still don't. So with the leadership of Councilor Allen and Councilmember Mendez, we convened a meeting of the stakeholders 2 weeks ago. Greenways for Nashville, Walk Bike, DOT, Parks Department, etc. Very thorough discussion, very cordial. And I would say that it was, I think the view of many that Councilor Allen and Councilmember Mendez were not opposing, but they just approached this from different perspectives from each side. So it was very helpful to us that they were co-sponsoring a resolution that urged everybody stand down, let us get our hands around this with the data by the year's end. And I must say that Councilman Mendez made clear when we were negotiating that resolution that he wanted it indicated that there's no crisis going on in the Greenways now, and that was agreed to by the stakeholders meeting. And apologies if it was not drafted perfectly, but that was the agreement going forward, and you'll see that they both signed. And so my only worry about the amendment is it slightly alters that arrangement.
Mr. Mendez, you can reply to that.
Totally agree. In addition, the other changes at the end turn the slant from we won't necessarily do anything instead toward a slant of we should do something. And that's the second thing that I expressly wanted to participate in the process is there can't be an assumption in order for me to participate. I could be on the losing end, that's fine. But in order for me to participate, there can't be any assumption built in that we have to do something. And that's the change in language drafted by, I think, people who didn't love how the stakeholder meeting turned out after they thought about it, changes the slant toward more suggesting that we have to do something. And that's where I get off the bus.
Yes, Councilmember.
Okay, I have a question. I'm not sure if this is the right spot to ask it or not, but I will. If you tell me to stand down, I will. Two things. One, if we do nothing, we get flooded with e-bikes, and we can do nothing about it. If we don't do a study, if we don't do any legislation, is that what you're saying? That as of now, we can't stop it if we wanted to?
We get more super slow, super heavy bikes that are currently allowed under state law.
So right now, the
Is
state
that
says you
accurate to
can't.
Greenways? Like, can they put, are there e-bikes on the Greenways now?
Yeah,
Like, it's,
I ride one all the time.
okay, so there are e-bikes on, so whether, so this moratorium really does nothing to determine whether they're e-bikes or not.
Right, that's what you're saying.
Yes,
But then
Councilmember.
second, you
Specific
said,
response to that,
Yes,
my
ma'am.
understanding, and Cindy, you can help me with this, is that as part of this larger discussion, Trek has currently said, we will not put our bikes on the Greenway trailheads until this discussion is completed at the end of the year. So we're waiting for y'all to gather the data, and once you decide, we respect what Parks wants us to do. So they, at this point, based on the discussion that we had and what we agreed that the resolution would say,
so we have
Well,
this
said, they
gentleman's
studies are-
agreement.
we have a gentleman's agreement that's not written into that it was, I mean, they're on record
If
as saying.
somebody had their own, they could take their own e-bike on at this time, right? It's just that this track. And then you said it's not enforceable because of this, so explain that a little bit.
Metro Legal has made clear in writing and at the stakeholder meeting that the current rule from Parks does not legally prohibit e-bikes.
Okay, so it's not that the state is prohibiting us from enforcing it, so we don't have anything to enforce it.
There is an existing state law that says they're allowed unless we pass ordinance.
I just thought maybe you were saying something.
It is, and I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak. Did, Mr. Bradford, did you have any comment, or Mr. Hager? Okay. Yes, Larry?
Well, I thought, we got the Greenway Commission meeting tomorrow, and they're a little bit concerned about it. As Bob said, probably they're already allowed, but I think their biggest concern is crowding up the Greenways and making sure we've got the infrastructure to do them safely if we're renting out to these other companies. So we'll discuss that tomorrow. But I'm with you as far as, I talked to her about the aging of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't walk and ride a regular bicycle and at certain ages, and I can't ride my motorcycle down through there, so I'm gonna have to get me an e-bike, I guess. So, I get it, and I told them that the other day, we gotta find a happy medium there.
Well, the thing that concerns me about the amendment is that it alters what the stakeholders have already agreed to. And that seems to be unnecessary. That's my opinion. Ms. Hancock, did I see your hand raised? Okay. I just want to make sure everybody on the committee, since we have a full house. Yes,
I'm gonna need some clarification. So you're saying that a study is being done, that has to be done by January, that Trek is.
This resolution calls for the study and sets out who will do that. That's what this, that's the therefore of this resolution.
There is no study without the resolution.
Okay, so we're on the amendment. I think everyone's had a
Yes,
chance
if
to
I
speak. Do you have something else to say that you haven't already
I
said?
do.
Go ahead.
Mike, was this exact legislation, was the language proposed to your stakeholder meeting, or did this come out afterwards?
Came out afterwards.
Okay, so the stakeholders did not see this prior to it being filed. Also, I agreed to be a sponsor of the resolution because I think it's a good thing. And then once I saw the language, I saw that it is contradictory and inside itself. I think this amendment makes it stronger. It does nothing to stop the study, does nothing to change the intention here of the resolution, and that's why I proposed it, to make sure that we are clear on our intention of being objective.
Thank you. I think we've had a really great discussion.
In regard to the amendment, would the sponsor of the amendment be open to keeping the language about no incidents, but rescinding the last statement at the end that Councilman Mendez asserts is problematic for the process because it makes the presumption that we will pass some sort of legislation, whereas there are some people of the mind that as it exists today by state law, it's allowed, and thus we don't necessarily need to pass anything other than parks perhaps having a policy particular to, the way in which these are used, or reminders about the speed limits, et cetera, right, internal.
There's a motion to amend the amendment.
So
Right.
you,
I'm just
to be
asking
clear,
if she's
your-
friendly to that before I make that motion.
Your motion is to keep my strike through of the with no known incident language, those two, and then keeping the
And remove your edit, the final edit.
in Metro Parks as permitted under state law. I think that, I mean, I'll have to ask my co-sponsor as well. I think that I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, we know we can pass whatever we want in here, but state law is gonna trump us before or after we
Understood.
a lot of times. So I think that if that is something that the committee can, is more acceptable to the committee, I think I can be okay with that.
Chair, I'd like to make that motion, please.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion based on this amendment to the amendment? Yes, Mr. Mendez?
I don't say this as trying to advocate one way or the other, but Mike knows, the administration knows, to the extent I was invited to the stakeholder group on behalf of Walk Bike Nashville to participate, I will come off the legislation and the stakeholder group. Maybe that helps the stakeholder group, maybe it doesn't, but I'm not gonna play ball with the stakeholder group with the changes. And so it's fine. I'm happy to get outvoted. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last time. But I just, Mike knows that and wanted to share it with y'all.
Let's go ahead and, is there any changes to your?
Well, I guess I apologize, Chair, because I came over from Public Works, and so I did not hear the initial conversation about the amendment, but, are we parsing words here? Because is the assumption then that through the language that Council Lady Murphy has chosen, that it gives the perception that these bikes are dangerous, or that the other things have happened? Given, Council Lady, I appreciate your willingness to amend your amendment, based on the conversation that you've had at the table here today, that I was not privy to at the start, is there any way that you can think, as long as we're amending your amendment, to change that language that is in keeping, but that it does not, trying not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good here, that, I guess, Bob, or Councilman Mendez, what would keep you at the table or part of the discussion that maybe alludes to the, I guess, is the point of contention that, yes, some bad things with bikes have happened, the dispute is, are those just regular bikes or they're e-bikes, and that this is kind of language that could make people biased to the e-bike, as I assume. So do you have any alternative language if she's willing to amend her amendment?
So some of this was at the beginning meeting, some of it's a little more detailed. At the stakeholder meeting, there were two things I said in front of the group of 20. There can't be any suggestion whatsoever that e-bike, for me to participate, and I don't have to, but there can't be any suggestion whatsoever that there's a safety risk, or there's a danger, or that there's a problem, big problem or small problem, and there can't be any baked-in assumption that some legislation is needed going forward. Like, studying it is fine, but not with short-term rentals where we have to do something. I don't want to be, from Walk Bike Nashville's perspective, my own perspective, I don't want to be part of a process that assumes we have to do something. And the first draft of this was prepared before the stakeholder meeting, which nobody would be surprised that Council Lady Allen was all over it. And so it was, frankly, drafted initially from the perspective that it's definitely a safety problem, we should definitely do something. And I made a series of changes after the stakeholder meeting to take out the references to, we have to do this for safety, and we're definitely going to do something. And every last bit of the language of this changes is language that I added in to accomplish the two goals that were talked about at the stakeholders meeting. And now especially that we've got an electronic record of everything, if we take out the language about no known problems, we're definitely saying that there were problems, and that language is unacceptable. And again, the ethos of the stakeholders meeting, what the mayor's office asked for was, let's not have this fight now.
Right.
Let's just pass something and study it. And my view is, if all the language that I stuck in is getting stripped out, then we're definitely having the fight now. and I can be on the losing end of it, and somebody can propose legislation, but I mean, that's where I'm coming from.
If I may respond to Councilor Henderson,
And I have to go to another meeting, so.
and so, Councilor Henderson, this really is an effort to neutralize this resolution, which is why I accepted your potential amendment to that. If Councilman Mendez, and I guess I don't know if I said this earlier or not, I may have left this out. Part of the radio ad said that brought to you by the Downtown Partnership and Walk Back Nashville. Again, why are these outside organizations making decisions about putting e-bikes on our parks and greenways without parks being at the table, without NDOT being at the table, without Greenways and the Greenway Commission and commission members and the council being at the table? I am willing to take your amendment because I'm not gonna pick up my balls and go home, or take my bike and go home, if you would. I'm gonna keep on my tricycle here and try to get us to a neutral position. And in the spirit of compromise, I fully accept your amendment to my amendment, because that's what I think we need to do tonight, is compromise and make sure that this is done right. Otherwise, we're gonna have the scooter mess all over again.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor of the proposed amendment as amended? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm opposed.
Did
Okay,
you say all those opposed?
all those opposed?
Two.
I couldn't see. Two,
I didn't hear you call for the vote,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
this is masked. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand, because you can't see on the,
I apologize, in favor of.
in
the
favor
amendment as
of the amendment as amended. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor, 2 against the amendment. Proposed amendment to the amendment passes. And now the resolution as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Same 6 and 2. All right, very quickly, resolution 1089, the Fort Negley Park Master Plan update has been requested for our next meeting. So when we meet again, we'll get an update on that. Okay? Thank you, everybody.